This is a demonstration of how to state my online AP Microeconomics course in Syllabus agenda structure format. I started with the second of my three main course goals, that is, mastery of microeconomics principles and graphic models. Next, I reflected a bit on who my learners might be. I reflected on the context of their learning, their background, a little bit about who they might be, their hopes and fears. This shows, I think, how the Ignatian pedagogical paradigm can be embedded into our courses simply by rethinking how we organize course structure along these lines. Here's what I came up with for my learners and their characteristics and traits. They're probably juniors and seniors enrolled in Jesuit or diocesan Catholic high schools and enrolled in JVLA's AP Microeconomics course. But their characteristics and traits in the learner setups in the first column there might be they're involved in an accelerated track at their school, they're involved in sports, they may be taking other AP courses, they're probably stressed, concerned about college. They're isolated in their time zones compared to other students who might be enrolled in the course. They're getting tired maybe of direct instruction. They've had little to no online learning experiences, and they're what I would call dependent learners. They need a lot of reinforcement and monitoring. Next, I filled in the goal, problem, and solution sections that you see in the black up there on the top. Goal 2, problem 2, and solution 2. Because these seemed the easiest to go and the clearest. Goals, the goal, the problems, the obstacles, and the solution. So I went through my text and listed every main principle I thought students needed to know, as well as the graphic models that are key to microeconomics principles. Then I filled in the when and the where cells down below. So you can see the goal then is mastery of what I counted to be 264 microeconomic principles and the correct interpretation and manipulation of 42 graphic models. The problem in this context is that they don't know those 264 principles and 42 models. And the solution, of course, would be that they had mastered or were very, very familiar with the 264 microeconomic principles and the 42 microeconomic graphic principles. Next, I thought about the goal setups or the motivation for this goal. I filled in that section. So the goal again is mastery in the goal 2 column is mastery of those 264 principles and 42 graphic models. And the motivation for that is that conceptual and graphic model understanding is a key to the economic way of thinking, including the neo-scholastic way of economic thinking. Next, I filled in the problem setups, the obstacles to achieving the overall goal, in this case, mastery of microeconomics principles and models. I anticipate that my students will probably be very unfamiliar with the content of my 15 units in this course, and that is the main obstacle to achieving the goal. I also regarded these 15 units to be the how of my solution. These units contain the means by which my learners will achieve conceptual mastery of basic microeconomics principles and the graphic models they'll need to be familiar with in order to express micro principles. So that's my completed syllabus agenda structure for AP Microeconomics. Well, some of it anyway. I thought a lot about what were the goals of AP Microeconomics. At one point I had about 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 goals. I thought that The three that I have now settled on, I squeezed all the goals down into three main ones. First, to teach the neo-scholastic approach in the course, the neo-scholastic economic approach. Second goal, to teach the principles and models of microeconomics. And the third goal is to prepare for the AP exam itself. The first goal seeks to expose students to what might be called the neo-scholastic way of economic thinking. That is, I wanted to connect the rich Catholic intellectual heritage to my favorite social science, namely economics, and to provide one example to students of how their theology knowledge can translate into social science, and it's very, very relevant, I feel. Here's what this first goal looks like in agenda structure form. Notice the goal, problem, solution sections, and the GSUs, or goal setups, the PSUs, or problem setups, and the SSUs, or solution setups. So the goal is to embed and integrate neo-scholastic school of thought into microeconomics principles course. And the motivation for that is, again, in the goal setups column, connecting Catholic intellectual heritage to social science in a way strengthens the faith and deepens respect for social science. The problem is in the third to the last column there is complete or partial unfamiliarity with neo-scholastic school of economic thinking. The students probably enter never having heard of neo-scholastic approach. And the problem setups then, or the explanation of why that occurs, is exposure to Catholic heritage in theology, but not formally in social studies. I mean, that's an assumption I'm making, may or may not be true, but to a degree, they go to sociology or psychology and so on. And depending on the teacher, it may not be embedded in the course itself, especially if it's an AP course. And another explanation of why the problem exists is because there's a lack of neo-scholastic instructional resources. There's also lack of instructional space, in this case an AP exam. The solution setups, or the how are we going to get to the solution, where the learner is familiar with neo-scholastic economic way of thinking, is to practice reading, discussing, and applying the neo-scholastic school of economic thinking to contemporary issues in each unit. We already went through the second goal, the one in which mastery of microeconomics principles and graphic models was specified. This is sort of the AP syllabus. Take a look at the problem setups and the solution setups, the red columns there. So the problem setups, the explanation of why there's a block there is that students are unfamiliar with the content of those 15 units. And so the solution setups, or the how of accomplishing the goal of mastering micro principles and models, is to go through those 15 units. Finally, I have a third goal, kind of obvious but important to state, I think, namely to help students experience success when they take the AP Microeconomics National Exam. Notice my goal setups, problem setups, and solution setups. Also, notice the unique circumstance of the fact that this course ends in December of 2013, but the AP Micro Exam is given in May of 2014, so there's a gap of several months between the time they've had the course and when they actually take the test. That's why I require down there at the bottom, where you see the when and the where, a mandatory callback review session in April. That's to help students brush off the cobwebs and recall what they learned about microeconomics principles and graphics.